Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my freaking review of The Man of Steel. Okay, so I'm gonna skip the introductions other than saying that my name is Emily Sophia, and for those of you who don't know me, on this channel I usually do TV reviews, especially of the Showtime series Dexter, which is returning for its 8th and final season June 30th. I've done The Walking Dead, Bates Motel, Hannibal, gonna be doing Breaking Bad, and I've done a few movie reviews, and I'm gonna be doing some more of those, this one included. So I'm a total sucker for superhero movies across the board. As much as I am a Marvel girl at heart, you know, I grew up on like the old school Superman cartoons, okay? I don't know, you know, when did Superman first come into fruition? Was it like, you know, I'm gonna look that up because I watched like this super ancient cartoons, like, and I swear they were from like the beginning of the 20th century. Okay, so it says that he was created in 1933. Okay, Great Depression, makes sense, you know, you like coming out of this era of economic defeat across the nation and poverty and despair for so many people. You know, you're gonna get a hero like Superman, an icon to strive towards and to glean hope from. Yeah, so it did come out way back when. I watched the old cartoons, okay? And also, I did in fact wear this t-shirt to the premiere. And I felt really bad because it's actually not my t-shirt, and I got a lot of compliments for it. Have you ever had that happen to you? Like, you go out and you're wearing a shirt and everyone's like, oh, I love your shirt, and you're like, ah, it's not mine. And then you just secretly laugh to yourself because you feel attractive in somebody else's shirt and nobody knows it's not yours. So, victory, I tell you what. So I'm gonna get right into it. So for those of you who don't want spoilers, I'm going to say a few words about the movie before I go into greater detail about it. You know, there's a lot of hype revolving around this movie, and I personally really got into that and was very excited about what I was seeing in the trailers and everything. And I was excited to see, you know, what Zack Snyder was going to bring to the table with this, and very excited to see Henry Cavill, however you want to say that. You know, I was really enthused to see him portraying a fresh rendition of Superman, and to also see Michael Shannon as General Zod as well. I'm all about the villain, so I was really excited to see what he was going to bring to the table of alien inter-universal warfare stuff. I was very excited about that. And you know, and from what I could tell from the previews, Zack Snyder and his team, you know, Christopher Nolan was kind of involved, and we had a variety of other big names under this film. I feel like they were kind of trying to do what Christopher Nolan did with Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy. You know, they want to make a raw and dark and to some extent more believable version of Superman, because there's not much that is truly believable about this kind of a hero. He's indestructible. Absolutely nothing can faze him. How does nobody know who he is after he's on the news incessantly, and all it takes is a pair of freaking hipster glasses for no one to know who this guy is? And you know, there's a lot to it that is very much fiction. I mean, the story is in fact fictional. I hate to burst your bubble if you did not think that to be the case. But they're trying to bring an element to the story that makes it more impactful for our generation, something that we can grip onto, something that we can really be moved by and compelled by and think about in the context of our own lives. You know, what would we do with someone like Superman in the universe among us? You know, so that's kind of the sense that I walked into the movie with. And overall, I really liked it. You know, if you're wondering if you should go see it in theaters, if it's really worth all the hype that has been revolving around it lately, I would say that in many respects it does live up to that hype. in some ways, you know, there were some things that I desired that were not fleshed out in full, some things that felt a little bit short for me. So if I was to, you know, rate it on a 10-point scale, you know, I would give it about an 8, you know, which in some worlds is like a C+, B-, you know, kind of depends if you're a glass half full or glass half empty, you know, and I'm glass half full about this movie, so, you know, I'd say it's a B-, you know, at the very least. And so I'll explain. First, I'm going to look at the cons, and then I'm going to look at the pros, because I don't want this review to end on a note of, wow, that sounds like a really shitty movie. Like, because it's really not. It's extremely enjoyable and bombastic and in your face. It goes by really fast. I'm gonna warn you guys though, if you're going to see it in theaters, this movie was freaking loud, okay? I've never really had that problem seeing a movie before, but I did seeing this film, and you know, every theater is different, and in some cases every room in every theater is different. So I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, if I were you, go out of your way to see it in the theater that you know has like the most legendary sound system ever, because it will rip your ears to shreds like during the last hour, because, you know, it's the last hour of the film is literally non-stop action. And because Superman is like indestructible, you know, nothing can like defeat him, nothing can like chop off his limbs or anything. Like, he's pretty much untouchable. So everything else around him has to explode. All the buildings and the landscape and everything has to be destroyed because Superman cannot, okay? So that is shattering glass and just exploding everything. And it's like nails on a chalkboard at some point, you know? I don't know if any of you guys have Regal cinemas in your area, but that's where I went and saw the movie, and I saw it in the RPX room, which is the Regal Premium Experience room, which was pretty fancy, and they have like a, you know, super crazy high-tech sound system, and it was just ridiculously loud. Like, at some points I was just kind of sitting there like this, you know, kind of leaning against my seat like, yes, I understand. I get it. Everything is blowing up. You're going to do the same thing to me. But yeah, so I know that's kind of a weird comment to make, and you know, every theater is probably going to be different, but don't necessarily go out of your way to see it in the theater that has like the loudest, most crazy sound system ever. If you want, you know, I felt like I was in like a rock concert, you know? At some points I was just like, wow. Like, I seriously felt like there was gonna be like feedback or something at some point, but yeah, I mean, it's very much in your face, in your ears, in your brain. Like, there is nowhere to escape from this movie. It will enter every fiber of your being, okay? And if that's what you want, go for it. Go all in, it'll be a blast for you. Yeah, so having said that, spoiler alert as I go forward, if you don't mind having some elements of the plot spoiled for you and you'd rather just see the movie for the experience of seeing a hero film, which I understand, then you might want to keep listening. Otherwise, you know, you might just want to hang on to this video, put it in your watch later playlist or whatever, and come back after you've seen it so we can talk about stuff. And if there's anything that I don't talk about in the depth that you guys so desire, leave comments. I am more than glad to fill in the blanks for you guys below. So let's get into it. The list of cons. I did make a list when I got home last night while it was all still fresh in my noggin. So let's do this thing. Alright, so number one issue that I had, the movie's called Man of Steel. At no point in the movie is this even remotely referenced at all. The phrase Man of Steel it's not said. I mean, it's generally understood, you know, like there's a scene where, you know, the douchebag redneck at the bar who's hitting on the chick, you know, Clark steps in, tries to break it up, the guy like punches him and it's like clang, you know, so we get the sense that this guy is rather steely in his makeup, genetically all that jazz. But I mean, it's like they could have very easily slipped that in and kind of, you know, brought it forth a little bit. I mean, that's a tiny complaint, but it's just like, you know, they're just trying to pick a Superman name, you know, for a film that hadn't been claimed before, but it's like they called him Superman once, you know. One of the military guys was like, oh yeah, by the way, they're calling him Superman. And you know, I always feel like in a lot of movies, the way that they like explain how certain heroes get their names, it's always really like lame. They just sort of are like, oh, you're so and so, okay, cool, you know. So basically they could have said Man of Steel and they didn't, so it's whatever. That's really the least of my concerns, but it's like, it really would not have been a far stretch for them to just slip that in there. And then, okay, so the mind-numbing action sequences throughout the film, to some extent for me, kind of took away from the plot and the story. You know, I'm all about the intrigue, and I'm all about plot development. I love some good action scenes, you know, especially if they're really visceral and raw and just like get you inside. But like I said, like at least the last hour of the movie was non-stop action. And you know, once you come to terms with the fact that there's really nothing visually that you can grasp onto in some of those action scenes, once you just come to terms with the fact that, you know, there's nothing you can really solidly hold on to, and you just let it all just sort of wash over you like this crazy tidal wave of, you know, alien warfare, and you just sort of accept that, it's okay. But it's really easy to like mentally check out for like 10 minutes and just not know what's been going on. Like you feel like you are in this other world, and I mean really in some way you are, but it's just like it kind of, all the action at the very end with very little like story development in between the different action segments and fight scenes, it really kind of left me dizzy, okay? And I mean, it is Zack Snyder, you know, for those of you who are familiar with his films, you know, this is kind of something to be expected. He's sort of got ADHD, you know, it's like you can't be focusing on any like one thing at once. Like it's very jumpy, very like you're everywhere. You're going to feel like you are dissociating, I don't know, whichever word, from yourself, and just kind of like you are just these particles like floating around and trying to like there's just nothing to grab onto at some points. It's very crazy. I mean, at the same time, it's very visually stunning as well. Like it's really phenomenal to see the special effects and everything that were used. But it was just like, whoa there, cowgirl, calm down. Like, I get it, everything's going crazy, like just give me a little more story, just a little ledge for me to sit on, and just, you know, throw me a bone here. But yeah, so almost overly intense action at times, but I mean, I liked it. But again, you know, I really like the visceral action, like the stuff that's really raw and not necessarily bloody, but you know, often that comes into play if you're not Superman, so you know. So like I said, you know, since you're Superman and you're indestructible, everything else in the world has to explode around you, and it's just a bit much. So yeah, that being said, you know, in some ways there was a certain thinness of plot development and backstory. You know, they kind of had an interesting timeline for the film. You know, we start off like at the very beginning, you know, Superman / Kal-El is born, and then, you know, everything goes crazy, his planet's destroyed, and he is sent safely off into outer space and lands on Earth, blah blah. And then the next thing you know, we find him, he's on like, it's like Deadliest Catch, you know. He's out on some vessel in the craziness of the wilderness and the seven seas, and you know, he's all beardly and loner status, looking like freaking Wolverine from the X-Men, okay? But yeah, so I mean, for a while we really had this kind of interesting pacing going. We're going back and forth between the present and the past and kind of seeing Superman slash Clark Kent piecing everything together about his life. And that was really cool. But then as soon as we started getting more into the action of everything, it was like those elements of the plot really became, you know, they kind of became more undertones than anything else. And I like a really substantial, cohesive, constant plot, like, and you can maintain that through the action, but at times it was kind of lost in the craziness, I think. So, yeah, and another thing that really troubled me, and, you know, maybe this is something that they might explore in a sequel if they do choose to continue this. I mean, you never know what they're going to do with the Superman film. I mean, there's a lot of other DC characters that deserve acclaim and films who haven't been tapped into yet. So, you know, I don't know what they're going to do. But I really didn't feel like a very tangible connection between Superman and humankind and, like, you know, the perspective of ordinary people regarding Superman. Like, the only real connections that we see made in the film between Superman and other humans primarily is his own, his human family and Lois Lane and the guy who used to bully him back in school, who's like working at IHOP, you know, briefly, and he kind of, you know, he sort of has some exchanges with the military and stuff like that. But in general, they really gloss over the matter of how, like, humankind is perceiving Superman. And I guess, you know, to some extent, the movie looks more at his backstory and at the more intimate connections that he is establishing, like figuring out who his family is, who he is, and then, you know, he has no intention of going out and trying to save the world. You know, his Earth father, Jonathan Kent, Kevin Costner, you know, he has constantly so ingrained in Clark's mind that the world's not ready for him, and so he's constantly holding back from being that hero for the world in order to, you know, kind of protect it, or at least attempt to, and as it turns out that doesn't really work out so well, you know, inevitably. But I would have liked to see more of, you know, what people were thinking of Superman and, like, the impact that he has on the individual. You know, he's more, by the end of the movie, he's more of a hero for the world than he is a hero for, like, the everyman, you know, of America or whatever. And so that was just not explored as much. I mean, you think of, like, the old Spider-Man movies, you know, when everybody first discovers, like, who Spider-Man is, right? And they have, like, the scene in the movie where they're, like, going around interviewing people, like, on the news, and people are like, well, I don't know who he is, or, like, I think that he's blah, 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 and we get to see, like, the American people and how they perceive this hero. And I've always been interested in that stuff as far as hero films go, so I would have liked more of that. Yeah, and it's, you know, the original father of Clark Kent slash Kal-El, Jor-El, is portrayed by Russell Crowe. He says, you know, that Superman is a goal to be strived towards, and it's like, what exactly does that mean for humankind? Because really we just see him, you know, fighting against his past in the way that that's, you know, trying to impose itself on humankind, and it's just a very broad scope as far as, like, the connection with humanity, which I think, you know, I think it's good to explore. So, but again, you know, that could definitely be the theme of a future film if they wanted to do that. So, that being said, also the scene of Zod's, General Zod's death, I really wanted that to kind of be opened up a little more, to have something said between Lois Lane and Superman at the end, you know, because there's that fatal moment, you know, he finally kills General Zod, and then he realizes, you know, that he needs the time to mourn his own people, because in the process of destroying Zod and his followers, he destroys the potential for his original race to be restored in any way, shape, or form. So he just lets out this intense cry. You know, I almost laughed like watching his face as he was about to scream. It was just like, you know, he was like he was about to throw a tantrum, but at the same time, you know, it was very, very emotional. And you know, Lois goes and finds him and just kind of, you know, he's kneeling down and she presses his head like against her stomach, and it's a very vulnerable point for him. But then nothing is said, and then next it kind of leaps into, you know, this sort of humorous scene, like, oh, everything's kind of going back to normal. And I would have liked for there to be a little bit more depth, you know, to tie in more of the themes from the movie into that really pivotal, huge moment. It's like finally all the action dies down and just everything is silent and open and empty, and there is, you know, and it was just kind of like boom, really abrupt, and then we just kind of move on. So, you know, pacing wise, it was just a little bit weird for me. Even it would have been good to just have a little more plot to allow for more of the intrigue and, you know, clever writing, dialogue, stuff like that I really enjoy, and we've gotten a lot of that from recent Marvel films, so I guess I sort of have that expectation to some extent. I would have liked to see a more independent Lois Lane. You know, Amy Adams did an exceptional job. She is a freaking sweet pea, okay? And you know, we see that there's this kind of this sassy side to her. You know, there's this adventurousness, and there is a sense of independence, but yet, like, at least 4 or 5 times in the movie, you know, whenever she gets into the thick of things, I mean, even after that really cool scene where she encounters the spirit of Superman's father, and he's like guiding her through the alien ship, and it kind of made me think of like a video game. It was sort of cool. I was like, yeah, I would love to have done that scene myself. But, you know, she always kind of ended up turning back into the damsel in distress, and, you know, traditionally that's kind of the figure that Lois Lane has been, but I would have liked to see her, you know, get herself out of something at least once. But I mean, it's always, you know, we always get to see that moment where Superman sees her in peril, and we see that emotion, and Henry Cavill, I feel like I'm saying that totally wrong, but he just portrays that desperation so well, and that sense of a desire to rescue and to protect, you know. He does a good job. So, you know, I guess the more of his face, the better. Yeah, so then I would have liked, you know, more follow-up on themes, and I'll talk about the major themes that I saw in the movie, and less, you know, less of the, as far as the action goes, less just throwing through windows and exploding through everything. And I like the visceral, like, fist combat. Yeah, so let us talk about the pros, because there are a lot of things I loved about this movie. So let's get into that. The cast was absolutely excellent. Honestly, I feel like they could not have cast it better. You know, with Russell Crowe, Kevin Costner, Amy Adams, and Henry, and Michael Shannon. It was really the dream team. Like, everybody just embodied their characters so well, and I absolutely loved that. I really felt that the characters were very consistent throughout, and I really enjoyed that. And it was, you know, they chose an interesting kind of non-linear story form. You know, we start at the very beginning of Superman's story, and then we jump ahead to the point at which he is a loner. And I think that that was a really good way to approach the film as well, as seeing Superman as the loner, as a drifter and a vagabond, and he's trying to find his place without over-asserting who he is, you know, on humanity, being that, you know, they're not ready for it. And so I think that that was a really good catalyst of conflict in the movie, because otherwise you kind of boil it down to the black and the white and the good versus evil, and, you know, so it added this sort of intrigue, and at some points he seriously looked like Wolverine, okay, you know, especially when he's out in the ocean, you know, saving all of those guys on the burning ship, and I thought that was really funny. It's like, Hugh Jackman, what are you doing here? But yeah, so I like to see that aspect of Superman, and yet he's not completely embittered against the world. He's just constantly withholding, and he wants to be more, and we get to see him open up and flourish and explore who he is as he finds the spirit of his father, and etc., etc. So it was kind of a cool journey for him. And visually this movie was very stunning. You know, the alien environment has this really uncanny sort of fluidity and this enormity as well that was just very engrossing to watch, you know, especially in the first scene when we see Superman's original home planet, and, you know, seeing the alien vessels as they're, you know, trolling around Earth, and I thought it was, you know, stylistically, I was jiving with it. It was very appealing aesthetically. So some of the themes that I really noticed were, you know, there's choice versus determination, you know, because what is so significant about Superman is that he embodies the right to choose one's path, and that is why, you know, his parents wanted to rescue him and to have themselves left behind, you know, even to the destruction of their own planet. You know, their fates are tied, and they want the chance to completely start everything fresh. And the question is, you know, if Superman's, if his own kind had the opportunity to be restored and to come back to life, you know, would they learn to be able to choose, or would it be, you know, this, you know, like starting over with all the same mistakes from the previous generation, and how they engineered these beings and preordained them to their own fates, you know. It kind of makes me think of like Brave New World and some of those futuristic dystopian novels, you know, that are interesting. And then we see there's like the individual identity versus the group sacrifice, you know, Superman / Clark Kent / Kal-El. He's finding himself and figuring out, you know, being that I am who I am, for whom am I going to sacrifice? So there's that. We see like the cost of truth versus concealment. You know, it's like, what is, you know, how do you know that the world is not ready? How do you present who you really are without rocking the boat too much? Or should you just let that boat rock and just do your thing, you know? Be the diva you are inside. There's themes of, you know, reconciliation with the past and present very strongly in Superman's story. There's, you know, themes of hope, of family, of legacy, like, you know, and largely it's that you choose your family, you choose who you're going to be, who you're going to fight for, and really choice is what this movie is about, which I think is a very interesting approach. And I would have loved to see more of those themes come forth, even through all the crazy action sequences that we get. I also really like the interrogation scene. You know, all the military guys are like, Superman's gonna turn us, he's gonna kill us all, and then he's like, you guys, you realize I've been here for a long ass time and I haven't done anything. You just need to chill. You know, I like this kind of humorous approach, you know. The chemistry with Amy Adams as Lois Lane and, you know, Henry as Superman was real good. I liked it. I mean, I would have liked to see, you know, more moments between them, but, you know, overall, it was a really great film. What did you guys think? If you saw it, do you want to see it? What are some of your favorite scenes? Do you want them to make a sequel? How would you rank this among, you know, your other favorite hero films? Does this make the cut for you? So thank you guys so much for watching this long review. I'm also going to be reviewing the latest episode of Hannibal today. That is the 14th of June, depending on when you're watching this. So thank you guys so much. I hope that you enjoyed this film. I really did. You know, there were some things that I wanted more of personally, but overall, I'm really satisfied with it. I'm glad I did the midnight premiere. It was a blasty blast. You guys are wonderful and marvelous. Thanks so much, and I'll be back before you know it. Take care, guys.